Welcome back to Season 3 of Defense Talk, Securing the Key Advantage, brought to you by the Council on Geostrategy in partnership with ADS Group and sponsored by BE Systems. I'm Viktorija Starych-Samuoliene, co-founder of the Council on Geostrategy, and today I am delighted to deliver this special episode focused on Farnborough Airshow 2026. Now, every 2 years, the global industry turns its eyes to Farnborough, but this year feels different. Following the publication of the Defence Investment Plan and the Accra NATO site, the conversation has shifted entirely from future concepts and public diplomacy announcements to immediate capacity and production scaling required to strengthen our deterrence and defence. Now, with clear government backing now locked in for major programs like GCAP and a clear need to move faster and more efficiently in reindustrializing and rearming our alliance, this week is all about how industry intends to deliver on those targets. Now, to unpack these themes and to look at what Farnborough 2026 will bring, we are absolutely delighted to be joined by Craven, who is the Chief Executive Officer of ADS Group, and also Véronique Bardelmann, CEO and Senior Vice President Europe for Safran Group and ADS Vice President for Aerospace. So Kevin and Véronique, welcome.
Thank you, Viktorija.
Thanks a lot.
So let's dive in. Farnborough 2026. What should we expect to see at the show?
We're expecting a great show. We've built a brand new hall, which we've sold out, and we've for the last week been squeezing in extra exhibitors. We've increased the capacity for visitors on the Friday, and generally, we don't have a spare inch to spare because the entire world is coming to Farnborough for this show. So I'm expecting a great show with, 2/3 of the exhibitors being international, plus, of course, everyone deeply interested in our political system this week.
Kevin, also, as some of our listeners might be aware, this year there have been some changes to RIAT as well. How have those changes affected the program planning and what will be happening at Farnborough Airshow?
And of course, I should say that, of course, RIAT is not cancelled. The flying portion of the event has been cancelled, unfortunately, but the industrial engagement is still going on. But what it has meant for Farnborough is that we've been very fortunate to get perhaps more of the aircraft assets that would otherwise have not made it over from RIAT, is one small example. But we've also been able to perhaps take some of the larger meetings that would have happened in the run-up and through RIAT as well. So we work very closely with RIAT, and we've done so this year to help minimize the impact for them from the war in the Gulf, but also to ensure that the industry who come to both RIAT and to Farnborough still have a great time at both.
Now, Véronique, let me turn to you. And well, from my experience attending Farnborough air shows, these shows always bring together highly distinct sectors, including commercial civil aerospace, cutting-edge space tech, and also frontline sovereign defense. Now, what does it mean for the industry that you represent?
I think for the first time, Farnborough, which was more focused on civilian aerospace, is going to be more on defense. And that's going to be very interesting discussions because there are so many innovations, so many technologies that you can use actually for both sectors. So, and that's kind of a first, really. Farnborough is going to be the first air show to tackle both those sectors. So it will be extremely interesting to see the cross-fertilization between both sectors that is going to take place at Farnborough, where people from the defense industry talk with, some investors that are sometimes only focused on, the civil aerospace. So I think that will be very interesting to see what is the outcome out of it.
So the show, of course, is a possibility to demonstrate what industry is developing and what are those new next generation capabilities, as well as a wonderful networking opportunity. But when it comes to practical outcomes, how does this show and putting those different representatives from defense industry, also commercial sector and commercial aerospace sector, how does this event turn those conversations, those demonstrations into real outcomes?
So for industrial players, Farnborough is absolutely critical to connect with some other players that can bring solutions. Currently, we're facing several challenges. The first one being just ramping up. The market is still growing at a very fast pace, kind of 4% a year. So we've got huge order books. So the question is, what are the solutions we can find to make it happen? So meeting with suppliers, with the finance community, with, I would say, innovation and research players is so important, because we can't keep the current status. We have to find solutions to be able to cope with the ramp up. So I would say that's the first outcome, is finding people who can bring solutions to you, and so that you can better innovate together. And then obviously, about innovation, the second key topic for the aerospace industry is the probable or potential launching of the new single-aisle programs by the major OEs, so Boeing and Airbus. And so on this topic, the aerospace industry is entering what we call money time, meaning you need to get prepared. You need to be able to demonstrate that you got the best technology, but also that you're able to ramp up extremely quickly. So again, Farnborough is a great place to connect with people that can have some solutions and innovate together.
So Farnborough Airshow this year, of course, is taking place right after the Ankara NATO summit, which took place just a couple of days ago. And Kevin, let me perhaps turn to you. Now, for the very first time, I feel this year, we saw that clear integration of industry and defense industry into the alliance's effort to, well, really rearm and reindustrialize. So I think a very good example was that NATO Defense Industry Forum rather than the NATO Public Forum, something that we have been used to for a very long time. Now, in light of those conversations which took place in Farnborough, and of course, well, a couple of weeks prior also in Portsmouth as part of the NATO Industrial Advisory Group plenary sessions, which ADS was very actively involved in, what is a follow-up that we might see at Farnborough Airshow?
So firstly, and Farnborough is interesting in that there are a large number of sectors convened at Farnborough. So we've talked about aerospace, we've talked about defence, but we've also got the investment community gathered at Farnborough this year as well, attending our investment summit. And that is particularly pertinent to your point about Ankara, because for the first time we are genuinely seeing the private capital markets being invited into these political and complex industrial forums for discussions around how we can afford the latest weapon systems and industrial capacity that we need to fight a modern industrial war. So the clear outtake from Ankara was that industry and governments need to work together. Modern conflicts require huge industrial capacity, both as a deterrent, but also to fuel the pace and velocity of modern warfare. And then the new addition is that even governments now would like to see more private sector involvement in it. So Farnborough is the kind of place where we can have those conversations in a very real environment where the products and unique capabilities are on show alongside the discussions.
There's, of course, a very strong international element when it comes to the Farnborough Airshow. Now, how international is this show going to be this year?
We have, as I think I mentioned, 2/3 of the exhibitors are international. We have 28 international pavilions. That's up from 21 since 2024. And we won't know till after the show, but last show we had 280 international delegations, and I'm hoping to beat that this year. We certainly had over more than that in terms of inbound requests, let alone the outbound invitations we've done. So I think genuinely it is an international show hosted in Britain, and I'm looking forward to it.
And to maybe to build on your words, Kevin, so that means that for the defense and aerospace industry, the UK one, it's just a fabulous moment just to showcase our capabilities. We've got the world coming to Farnborough, and in the UK there are fantastic innovation and extremely good companies and players. So it's a great opportunity for us.
And of course, Aerospace relies heavily on international markets, with exports accounting for 74% of revenue, totaling £30.6 billion. And the UK defence exports reached £10.8 billion, representing 33% of the sector's total revenue. Now, have we reached the full potential, or can we still go further than that? And if that's the case, how does this show contribute to it?
For the aerospace industry, obviously, there are great opportunities. Because again, it's an opportunity to meet with other customers that are not necessarily, the end customer, but that can be tier 1, tier 2 customers, and to be deeper into the global aerospace supply chain. So because now, the supply chain is really globalized and you're going to have so many players for all the countries, it's an opportunity for us to fit into all those different streams of supply chains all over the world. So in particularly for SMEs and, or mid-tier companies, I think it's really an opportunity to become even more international.
Kevin, looking globally, we are doing pretty well when it comes to exports, I feel. But what are those untapped markets, in your view, the UK should be focusing on?
Well, so the UK is obviously a very significant global player in both defence and aerospace markets, and therefore perhaps growing our market share is probably first concern rather than looking at new markets. And we're at a pivotal moment in aerospace where in the next couple of years, the next generation single aisle programs are going to be decided, and where the geographic locations of those manufacturing facilities. So Véronique mentions the supply chain element of that, growing our share of that would be fantastic. The adjacent markets or geographic areas where we can challenge, Middle East is obviously a place where the UK has long and deep relationships, and of course undergoing a regional conflict at the moment. So again, there are significant opportunities for defense capabilities there. Maybe the areas I would point to that are newer, but still huge opportunities for the UK would be AI. is an obvious one, and then the newer elements of defense tech, where some of our products and firms are deeply engaged in Ukraine, who by the way will also be here in full force for one of the first times in a huge international show.
Now, of course, we have just recently seen the long-awaited launch of the Defence Investment Plan in the UK. And I think one of the headline announcements were those 8 billion allocated for the sixth generation Global Combat Air program over the next 4 years. Any other observations, Kevin, when it comes to the DIP?
I mean, firstly, we should say it's great that it's arrived. I think the 9 months of uncertainty has been unhelpful. And of course, as it's arrived, is it the one that everybody would like to see? And is everyone absolutely thrilled? No, they're not. But on the other hand, it does represent £296 billion worth of equipment plan over 10 years. So it gives the industry a lot of certainty about the future. It gives the right signals in terms of directions of travel. I think there is still some devil in the detail over the last couple of weeks since the announcement. There is some more news trickling through, and it's been enormously helpful for the UK to finally to be able to publish the full suite of policy documents, starting with the Strategic Defence Review, Defence Industrial Strategy, and now the Defence Investment Plan. Together, they actually made quite a strong read.
Véronique, your view?
I think the obviously everybody, and we in particular, welcomed the deep, right? It was long awaited and was really good. It was finally released. The key element to industry is really to have visibility, and to be able then to make decisions. Because when you know that when you know what's going to be the governance policy, then you can invest, you can start finding partners again, you can talk to investors. So it's really critical because it's the starting point for industry just to move forward. So a very, very critical milestone.
Of course, GCAP is one of those major announcements, and I would like actually to focus a bit more on that. So, in your view, what value GCAP is bringing to the defense and aerospace sector in the UK?
It's a huge milestone for us. People might recall that earlier this year there was an interim 3-month funding decision with about 600 million decision that only took the program as far as the end of June. So that level of uncertainty about the future was very worrying. However, so the sort of 5.6 billion announced for GCAP, which both reaffirmed the international partnerships with Italy and Japan, and then the reports of perhaps Canada coming in, as well as rumors around Saudi Arabia, are just evidence that these types of hugely expensive but hugely valuable and critical capabilities are game changers on the global geopolitical stage. And the recent news that the European FCAS program had finally come to an end, probably makes that even more important, where I would suggest that we may well get other possible partners in the program. So one, that international dimension with our allies, hugely important. Secondly, in a world where the US is perhaps going to be more focused around Asia Pacific and less focused on Europe having our own access to a 6th-gen capability is desperately important. So I think from a capability point of view, the faith in GCAP is desperately important. And then finally, the benefits to our industry. These are cutting-edge technologies where both the aerospace elements, but also the integration with the human in the seat and the loyal wingman drone sort of accompanying combat aircraft is going to be a really exciting capability to develop.
I guess there are two elements to this. So, first of all, that government to government framework, which is an international framework, and then secondly, also the timeline as well. So, it's a midterm program, and also, well, probably closer to that long term program timeline. You've mentioned that this year, Farnborough will attract a significantly higher number of investors and representatives from the financial sector. So, if we take this example, do you feel that when private investors look at something like GCAP, do they see those opportunities with lower risk profile to actually back our UK defence and aerospace sectors?
So even more than our OEMs, investors look for certainty. And of course, they would like a zero risk investment ideally, but there aren't many of those around. So the big programs like GCAP and the shipbuilding programs will mostly involve the listed markets and the major players like BAE, Leonardo, etc., involved in the sort of GCAP program. But what it is pointing to the size and shape of the defense marketplace, and together with the inputs into that, like the European SAFE program with 150 billion euros investment. Yesterday, news of the 90 billion euro loan to Ukraine, 60% of which will be given over to defense products. That's those two things, the huge amounts of money and the capabilities on display, are making defense much more attractive for investors. In terms of the wider capital markets, both private equity, venture capital, and the next tier down from the large institutions, they are looking at how they find a way into this marketplace as well. So, probably we get a couple of calls a week from investors wanting our help in terms of understanding the domain and the best place for them to play. So it's really encouraging to see, and that long-term certainty provided by the big capital programs is incredibly helpful.
Véronique, what is your perspective? How has in recent years or months your engagement with the investor community changed?
I think, we're starting with a situation where some of the investors just were really reluctant to invest into defense. So if you go back 2 years ago, we had at ADS, SM is really struggling because they were into defense. Things have changed drastically now. Defense is not a kind of a secret word anymore. So I think the pace of the industrial companies engaging with investors is much quicker, which is extremely good. However, there's still, I think, a need just for investors to understand the defense industry, and for the industry also to speak the same language. So that's as investors, I mean. So that's why I think ADS can play a role, facilitating that dialogue in some cases. But also, I like to highlight the fact that it's really good that through the DIP we've got now visibility on some key programs. However, if you start discussions with investors, obviously what will matter is to get a real order, a real command. So something which is critical is now the pace under which, the plans in the DIP are going to translate into orders, so that investors can support the different industrial companies.
So, Kevin, of course, the language of the investor community are facts and figures. And I know that ADS recently launched ADS's Facts and Figures. And can you walk us through, what are the findings and what is the health of the UK's aerospace, defense, and security sector right now?
So, yes, we announced our figures last week, and this is now, I think, 11 or 12 years in a row that we've done this. So we now have really good sets of numbers to compare over significant timescales. And I'm pleased to say that our sectors are in really good health, generating more than £110 billion in turnover every single year, adding more than £46.8 billion in value to the UK economy. So we employ roughly 468,000 people across the country in direct jobs. And typically, we would use 2 to 3 to 4, depending on the sectors, of indirect jobs to support those as well. And we've mentioned exports already in the conversation, but over 50 billion of exports annually. So defense probably about 40%, 30% of the security sector, and probably higher than 50% in the space sector. So significant drivers of our sectors. These are very important sectors for the UK and provide huge value to the UK economy.
Seen that demand signal from the NATO alliance. We've seen that demand signal also coming from the DIP. Veronique, in your view, can we actually go further than that? The numbers that Kevin has described, they do demonstrate that there's been some significant growth when it comes to all these sectors. But can we go further? And should we?
I think the answer is yes. Massification is currently a key topic on the defense market. If you compare again what the defense industry was like a couple of years ago and now, I mean, the lessons learned from Ukraine are absolutely huge and disruptive to the defense industry. Of course, you have always, high-end products that are, more expensive. But what is required now is also the ability to deliver at lower cost and at higher pace. So if we're able to do that in the UK, yes, we can go much further. So how do we manage this massification topic? How do we get the fundings for that? And that's why, the link with the investment community is so important currently to capture those market shares. So another topic of interest at Farnborough.
Absolutely. I guess when it comes to thinking about the show, we of course need to think about how does success look like. So the show represents industry, and we have just talked about the investors community interest as well, but it's all about the results and all about the outcomes. And Kevin, well, what does success look like? How do you measure if it's been a successful show or if it could have been a better show?
I mean, I think input demand is obviously a good indicator. As I mentioned, highest number of exhibitors, delegations, government pavilions, etc., etc. All of those are up, sort of 10, 15% over the last show. And then, of course, one of the traditional ways to track the success of the show is deals announced at the show. It's an interesting metric because COVID, that methodology of saving up your deals for a big platform like a Farnborough or a Paris Air Show fell out of fashion, but I feel as if it's coming back more so. So just to put some granularity on that, in the last show, we did about 80 billion worth of aircraft orders during the show. That's civil aircraft orders. The defense deals don't get announced in that way particularly. So I am hoping we might beat that. In actual fact, if we go back to be pre-COVID, this was a show that regularly reached numbers almost double that in many ways. So interesting dynamic, but an easy one to track. The strength of the show, in my opinion, though, is in the 70 or 80% of global CEOs in the aerospace and defense sectors getting together for 3 or 4 days and working on both deals but projects. And you see over time the benefits of those collaborations. There's no other show in the world that has that concentration of executive power together in the same way.
Now, Véronique, what about your approach? Like, what are the milestones that will tell you it has been a successful show?
Um, so maybe if you contemplate the broader industry, I guess, if people want to come back in 2 years' time, that means that was a good show. That means, a lot of deals had been done and partnerships being found. So we'll know, I guess, in the next after this Farnborough, in the next 8 months or so, how many of the players are going to book for the next Farnborough. So that's one. As far as, maybe Safran is concerned, to us, it's about accelerating the partnerships with customers, but also with suppliers and with the research community. So whether we'll be able to sign some partnerships or find innovative companies at Farnborough will show us whether, that was a good show or not. So having good surprises, I guess, shows that it is a good show.
I guess another practical question, or the way of looking at how we can measure this success, is, of course, well, we know that we need to reindustrialize. We know that we need to rearm. And the question is, how do we actually convert these meetings, demonstrations, conversations into that frontline capability that will strengthen our deterrence?
So certainly from both the aerospace and the defense point of view, what does tend to happen at Farnborough is the very latest in technology is showcased by all of the OEMs, and whether it's we're hoping to see some of our electric air taxis flying at the show, and we are hoping to see some of the Ukrainian technologies demonstrated and showcased as well. So those technologies will inevitably attract interest both from suppliers and from buyers. And you will see the strength of the show in terms of the follow-up, which may take some months, in terms of placing of orders or opening of conversations around the ability to supply as well. Equally, back to the concentration of executive power at the show. It's pretty rare that you can get sort of the top 100 aerospace and defense companies in the world together at any one given time. So people use the air show as a starting point for bilateral and multilateral conversations around both ongoing projects and future projects. So, I mean, we ourselves at ADS, for example, it's the third time we will have had an inward bound delegation from Japan, where, amongst the topics of conversations are exactly the combat air program that we spoke about, but many other things as well. So it's a milestone where that concentration of great capability and executive power comes together to catalyze programs and future strategic directions. Of course, trying to measure those in the moment is a hard thing to do. But as Véronique says, one of the best ways to measure that is the people who come back next time. These are not insignificant expenditures by our members and other organizations. So choosing to come back is both a example of the great faith that they place in us, but also of the great business outcomes they achieve.
Very excited about attending the show this year, but I know that you both also will be there. And I guess a question that I have is, if you were to choose one most exciting engagement that you've got in your calendar planned for the Farnborough Airshow week, which one would that be?
Yeah, but it's such a difficult question, Viktorija, to be honest, because we've got so many critical meetings with partners. I couldn't pick one over another. I think, I really wish we'll have a strong message from the new government about them being consistent with the policy they had so far for the aerospace industry. I think maybe, that's highly expected from us. So that would be a key moment among others. But I can't really choose, if it makes sense. So many good meetings are planned today.
A very diplomatic answer, Véronique.
We're going to have a go. I'm going to have a go, Victoria, because, look, I'm there Sunday to Friday, and it's generally a sort of 15, 18-hour day. So really hard to choose a particular thing that I would be most excited about. But what I would point to is maybe the Friday. So Future Friday is when we invite the public in and showcase both the capability, but also the careers that exist in these fantastic industries. And I'm really pleased to say that we think we're going to be sold out this year on the Friday, and that would mean approximately 55,000 people at Farnborough on one day, which is amazing. So parents and families coming to see what's in store for their kids' careers and what have you, together with, a really stellar fly past program where not only the sort of Lancasters, Spitfires, but we're going to have the Red Arrows and all the other exciting things that usually happen in air shows. But we actually have been worried about our capacity to cope with these crowds. So I think that's going to be a really exciting day that would set a pattern for the future shows in terms of how we attract the wider public interest in our industries, something that's desperately needed because, we are every year reporting over 10,000 technical vacancies in our sectors that we are struggling to fill despite the growth.
Well, it certainly is an opportunity, and I very much hope that this year's show will be the most successful show to date. And Kevin and Véronique, I would like to thank you for joining me for this conversation. Looking forward to seeing you there at Farnborough, and to our listeners, those who are attending this year, do enjoy the show, and those who have not booked their tickets or did not plan to attend, we very much hope that you will join us in 2 years' time.
Thanks a lot, Viktorija.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Victoria.
Kevin. Thank you, Véronique.